Doug Clothier, General Manager of SME at Old Mutual Corporate, joins us now to discuss the research results of the inaugural SME Employee Benefits Monitor. Good to have you with us today, Doug.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Listening to Lindsay at the top of the show, he mentioned that obviously we need SMEs to cultivate economic growth in South Africa, but are they prioritizing employee benefits as per the results that you've seen in your employee monitor?
Two things. SMEs are saying employee benefits are important. Sort of 4 out of 5 are saying that's something important. But when we say, do you have it in place, the numbers are much lower. So probably in our survey that we did, about 60% of SMEs have a retirement fund in place, but much lower than those saying that it's important.
Doug, there must be several reasons for this. A, it's maybe the SMEs don't have the infrastructure to put these things into place. You're surveying companies that have turnover between 2 and 200 million. So the ones at the top and even some in the middle, I suppose, do have that ability to introduce these schemes. That's number one. Is it too costly? And thirdly, we're going to be talking about wage negotiations in the gold sector later on. Are many of the SME employees not represented adequately by a union?
Sure. Let me take those piece by piece. I think in terms of are they represented by unions, probably not. It depends on the sector. So I think, if you find sectors like construction, some of the manufacturing sectors, you may find more union involvement there. But with coming up to wage negotiations is a good time for SMEs to be having conversations about their retirement funding, because this is obviously a great time where they could implement a scheme in a way that makes it a little bit less of an issue from an affordability point of view. I think your question was, why aren't they putting them in place? Why do companies not do it? And I think cost is a factor. So for an employer, he's struggling to keep his business going, and now he must have some retirement funding on top of that. It adds to his cost base. Definitely that is an issue. And so, as I said, I think the wage negotiations is a good time to start those conversations. I think some of the other issues that you mentioned, the complexity and that sort of thing, I think that can be a little bit overstated. So I'm speaking from an Old Mutual perspective inside the industry, and I think we've worked quite hard over the last few years to make umbrella funds, retirement funds, more accessible to even smaller companies. So talking to somebody this morning, they weren't aware that a company with as few as 5 people can actually become part of an umbrella fund. They tend to think, oh, it's much bigger than that. But actually, a company with 5 or 6 people, they can they can get a retirement fund going for their staff, and that would be a good thing for them to do.
So clearly goes back to the financial education and maybe the skills internally, as you allude to, within these small organizations.
When we ask companies what was it that led them to have to put employee benefits in place, one of the key factors was the extent to which the decision makers were comfortable with employee benefits, understood the need, and where they don't, it doesn't happen. But where they do, and they sort of see the long-term benefit both for their staff but also broader for the nation, then actually they are more likely to put a plan in place.
The benefits for the employee and from the employer for this type of scheme, for a pension scheme for an SME employee, what are they? What are the spin-offs? We've been sort of focusing a little bit on the negative, or rather I have. Talk about the positives now from both sides.
Well, I think for the company, the positive is knowing that, in a sense, they've done the right thing for their staff. People struggle to save. And if you put a plan in place, it's a form of forced saving. And what that does is it helps people to provide for that day, one day where they can retire. And there's a sense in which the company has then done the good thing. Now, for some people, that will motivate them a lot. For others, it doesn't affect their bottom line. What maybe affects their bottom line a little bit more could be as you put plans like this in place, I think companies do see that there's a greater emotional connection that they get with their staff. And then there's a question, to what extent does that flow through in terms of better performance and a better contribution that staff are making to the success of the company. I think for staff, the advantage is probably around the fact that they now are saving towards their retirement, and that's something that's central. I think there's the security that they have, knowing that they have a plan in place. One of the other things we found, about half the people in our survey felt that they were adequately provided for their retirement, but half the people not. So having a plan in place, it does help people to feel more confident on issues like that.
Well, we certainly hope the results of this particular survey only get better in the years to come.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today. That was Doug Clothier, who's the General Manager of SME at Old Mutual.